The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous supporters. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/donate. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek episode number 18.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek series, movies, and more. And today we're continuing our overview discussions of the various Star Trek series, and we've made our way to Star Trek Voyager. And so joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
And Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
So just before we begin, again, I just want a little bit of an announcement. Our listener survey is coming to an end. If you have not yet taken a few minutes to fill out our listener survey at sqpn.com/survey, I would greatly appreciate if you would do that. It helps us plan for you to make this network better, these individual shows better. It helps us know you and what you like and what you might be interested in. You know, we're always working to develop some new series, the future of SQPN. And if we know what you want and what you like, it means we're not shooting in the dark, which would be helpful.
Shooting in the dark is dangerous. It violates basic gun safety. Do not do it.
Exactly. So we don't want to accidentally hit one of our listeners. So help us to turn the lights on and take the survey. And as a thank you for taking a few minutes to fill out the survey, we are giving away 2 different Amazon gift cards for $50 each to 2 lucky listeners who participate. And again, it's sqpn.com/survey. So that's it. Star Trek Voyager, which began in January of 1995, picking up just almost like right after the Next Gen finished its 7-year run, and in the midst of Deep Space Nine, which had begun a couple years earlier, and Star Trek Voyager picked up.
And the first of the Next Gen movies. It was really a crazy time in Star Trek history because you had the finale for Next Gen, the first Star Trek movie, Next Gen movie in prep, Voyager in prep, and Deep Space Nine on the air. And it was chaotic for the producers.
I can imagine, but great for the fans. I mean, really almost like a golden age of Star Trek for us at the time. And maybe a golden age is returning, but 20 some odd years ago, there was a lot of Star Trek to be had. And so sort of the background for Voyager is this was at the same time that another little news was happening in broadcasting, which was the UPN network. Paramount looked at Fox and said, wow, the Fox Studios, they created their own network and now they have a place to put their stuff. Well, we want to have our own network. So they created UPN, which is something
United
else.
Paramount Network. Yeah.
Yeah. It became another network now. I forget what it is.
It's the CW.
The CW. Right.
Yep.
Because, and this was to coin a phrase and be a little bit upon the flagship series for the UPN network, which is kind of a little like how Discovery was the flagship series for CBS All Access streaming service.
And it's something that had originally been planned way back for Star Trek when Paramount had considered this previously, and they were going to launch Star Trek Phase 2, starring the cast of the original series. It was a TV series that never happened, but the pilot episode of it kind of turned into Star Trek the Motion Picture.
And so when we get to this entry, in 1995, they were developing in 1994. They had to figure out, what's going to make this different from Next Generation? And
Lost in Space, the original competitor of Star Trek.
Exactly. That was the series that got picked up by NBC instead of Star Trek back in the 60s, as we talked about a few weeks ago. And that's why we got Voyager. And so what we have is a Starfleet ship thrown across the galaxy into the Delta Quadrant, and they have to make their way home. They have 75-year journey ahead of them.
What's interesting about it was starting just from the choice of the ship. This wasn't the flagship. This isn't the biggest, the baddest, the strongest, the hotel in space. It's frankly a little science vessel. Yeah. It's a couple hundred people at most for the crew. It's smaller than the original Enterprise. It is
super fast.
Yeah. I mean, It was designed. It's a ship that's designed for long distance exploration already. I mean, and that plays into one particular episode, the Equinox, where Voyager was designed for long distance travel already. So it was already well suited for this.
Right. But so what we have so they have a ship that's not designed for long distance travel or this long of a journey. It's not a big bad ship. It's certainly not a strong warship. So that's the first thing. The second thing is when they get thrown across the galaxy, half the crew dies. It's a violent encounter. So many of the crew members die off the bat.
The most careless caretaker imaginable.
Yeah, that's right. This alien creature that was reaching out and grabbing ships from all over the galaxy looking for a compatible species to mate with. It's like a Delta Quadrant version of Tinder. And it was
violent Delta Quadrant version of Tinder.
But what saves Voyager in a sense is their mission at the time was they were hunting down the Maquis. Now the Maquis were a group of people that were originally from Next Gen.
Insurrectionists basically.
Yeah, and they developed it more in Deep Space Nine.
Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. Right, and they're basically former Federation citizens who lived on colonies on the border with the Cardassian Empire. And when the war with Cardassia ended, they were ceded to Cardassia as colonies. Like these, Cardassia, in the negotiations of the final treaty, the Federation had to give up these worlds, and these people didn't want to leave. So they ended up staying on these planets because it's their home. But yet the Cardassians was established an oppressive empire, and so this Maquis, this revolutionary band, maybe, or you might say terrorists, some might call them, depending on who you are. They developed to fight back against the Cardassians and against the Federation, which is a key element. And so Voyager was chasing them, and they both end up in the Delta Quadrant. And after the events of the pilot episode, they end up having to, become one crew. Yeah. And so now we've really thrown out the Roddenberry rule, which we talked about last week, which was that there was to be no conflict in a Starfleet crew. And now we have conflict from the get-go here between the Maquis and the Starfleeters.
Which introduces one of the many failed potentials of Voyager, because after they merge the crew, we get an episode or few where this conflict between the Starfleet crew and the Maquis crew comes up, but it never really gels. I mean, Chakotay, who is a Maquis first officer, really effectively manages the situation and keeps a lid on it, and we don't have a major uprising.
We do. Actually, there are a couple episodes where we do have some uprisings, and some of that is under the influence of alien influence that kind of gets the conflict going. But other times
it's in a holodeck or things like that.
But there are times when there are issues that have to do with the fact that this Maquis crew is not Starfleet. They didn't go to the Academy. They're rough around the edges. I mean, you end up finding a serial killer among them. I forget his name, but who
Lon Suter.
Right, thank you. Who actually has a couple of appearances. He's a recurring character until he makes the ultimate sacrifice. But
my point is, they don't exploit it to the extent they could have.
Right.
I mentioned there are a few episodes where it comes up, but we never have like a Maquis coup.
well,
on board the ship that goes on for any period of time.
Last week we talked about DS9, and compare the conflicts among the crew in DS9 versus the conflicts among the crew in Voyager. Mm-hmm. And you would think that the conflict in Voyager would be much more than DS9, because of course DS9 by and large was a Starfleet crew, with the exception of Odo and Kira and a couple others. You don't have that.
Right.
I agree with Jimmy that they started out with that potential, and then immediately boom, the Maquis became Starfleet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there was like a few episodes where, like, for example, B'Elanna Torres is the chief engineer, appointed chief engineer, and there's sort of conflict with her being over Starfleet crew, and
right.
and them kind of rejecting that, and so yes. But after that, I mean,
she settles into being Worfette, where she's just got a bit of a temper problem.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, and because it's a foundational aspect of the show. I mean, it's one of the core, like the bullet points when they pitch it to the network. It's lost across the galaxy is bullet point 1. Bullet point 2 is it's a Maquis and Starfleet crew. For all that, you're right. It doesn't play that throughout the series.
By the end of the first season, with the exceptions of like that the Tuvok's holodeck program and things like that, you really don't see it.
Right. I mean, it comes up a few times, but it's not really a key aspect of the series. You're right. I'll agree with that.
Then there's another problem with the series is, we have this 75-year journey for them to get back, and we know they're going to make it back in 7 years.
Right.
So they're always looking for some new shortcut that will get them closer to home, but not all the way home until the final episode.
Right.
Yes. So we're going to have these series of great leaps forwards, because it would be boring to have 7 years of plodding along and then one huge leap. So they do what you would expect and have periodic great big leaps, but that don't get them home. And that becomes a recurring theme on the show, and it's baked into the structure of the show that we're going to get these. And how many times can you go to that well?
Exactly.
Right. Well, the other part of it is they have to make a decision early on. Are we just going straight home? Are we going to make one straight journey that, with no side distractions? Well, that would be kind of boring after a while as a TV series. So
distress signal, don't care. Talk to the subspace hand.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not from here. You go talk to someone who's from here. But they early on they make this. We're a Starfleet crew and we're all about exploration. So we're even though we're going to probably add years to our journey, we're going to have these side distractions that take us all over the place.
If you played role-playing games, it's like, am I going to do the main plot line, or are we going to do all the side quests as I'm playing the game?
Right.
It's that kind of idea.
Right. Or a video game, like you're running, if you're going to do a straight run through, or like if you're playing like one of the Mario Brothers, you're going to go down every hole to the extra levels. Right. And whenever the Voyager gets a choice, they go down the hole. That's exactly what they do. So one of the other distinguishing features is the first female starship captain as a regular. I mean, we saw women.
And this is interesting. The casting choice was crucial here, because originally, I'm blanking on her name.
Villeneuve.
No. I know the
French
original
actress?
actress's name. No.
Yeah.
The one who got it.
Oh, Kate Mulgrew.
Kate Mulgrew. I was thinking Kate O'Mara, and that's the wrong person.
Wrong show.
Yeah. So Kate Mulgrew was not originally cast as Captain Janeway. Instead, it was a French-Canadian actress named Genevieve Bujold.
Oh, that's right.
And they actually got a day or so into taping with her for the pilot episode. And it was, and that footage still exists, and you can watch it. It's on YouTube. You can see the comparison with Kate Mulgrew's performance. And Kate Mulgrew, is Captain Janeway. She is the right person for this job. Yeah. I'm amazed they didn't give it to her initially, because when you compare Kate Mulgrew's performance to Genevieve Bujold's, it's night and day. Genevieve Bujold is like spacey. and not in a good way.
Exactly.
She's like zoned out, and she's contemplative and quiet and not dynamic and assertive and decisive.
And of course, these first scenes that they're filming are the ones where the ship's at risk, and there's high energy on the bridge, and the captain's just kind of like, oh, there's something happening.
Yeah, it's like, give that woman a cup of coffee or something. And apparently, and they knew as soon as they started filming that they were in big trouble, and Genevieve Bujold knew it too. And she, it was a very different experience than what she had had in acting before. She was not used to doing television series. And so the length of the workday and the prospect of doing this, 16-hour workday or more for 6 days a week for 7 years sank in on her really fast. Also, she wasn't used to working with directors in the way that the series was going to involve, because they have a new director for every episode. And she was used to working like on movies with one director for months. Right. And when she got introduced to the director for the pilot episode, she commented to one of the producers, "How am I supposed to work with a director I don't know?" And that was not a good sign. And to her credit, she asked within like the first day or so to be released from her contract. She just realized this was not going to work. The producers realized this was not going to work. And it's so good for the series that she backed out so quickly, because if they had gotten farther into production before it fell apart, it would have been much harder to undo. As it was, they had to call a hiatus for a few days. They cast Kate Mulgrew, who they'd already auditioned but didn't get it on the first round. And then Kate Mulgrew stepped into the part and did great with it.
Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, I'm looking at the list of other actors. They looked at a lot of different women for this role. And I'm looking at some of the other names, some that I recognize, like
the actress who played Leia Brahms was one of them.
Right. Claudia Christian from Babylon 5.
Oh, she would have been good.
Yeah.
Very different character, but she would have been good.
A little young. She would have been good, but I like the maturity that Kate Mulgrew has that Claudia Christian wouldn't have had.
There's Patty Duke, who had a little more maturity as well. She would have been interesting. Erin Gray from Buck Rogers. Who my first TV crush, shall we say?
Oh yeah,
yes, man. I was at an impressionable age when Buck Rogers came out. They even had Linda Hamilton, which was interesting. That would have been an interesting choice. They would have had the Terminator on one episode. So anyway, so Captain Janeway as the first female captain. I mean, she, especially in the initial seasons, she was a bit stiff, a little too. There was that weird moment early on where she had that confrontation with Ensign Kim about "Don't call me ma'am, you call me sir." And it was
it was the opposite. It was "Call me ma'am, don't call me sir." Was
it? Okay, there was I remember a weird interaction about the whole "ma'am, sir" thing, or just call me captain instead, I think is what she ended up saying.
They previously established that female officers on Star Trek were called sir. That's something that goes to the movies,
right,
and so forth, where they're calling Mr. Savick and so forth. And
that's a very naval tradition to this day.
Yeah, but it would feel a little weird to the audience to have Captain Janeway being called sir all the time. And so I actually didn't mind. I mean, it can be a little clunky on the dialogue level, but in terms of establishing, okay, on this show, she can be ma'am. Yeah. That was fine with me.
Yeah. So some of the other people that were, the interesting changes, all of the medical staff were killed in the initial toss into the Delta Quadrant. So we have the holographic doctor, which I loved Robert Picardo. I really enjoy him. But what they sometimes did with the doctor's character really drove me nuts at times, mostly from a technology point of view, but some of it from a philosophical point of view. And again, we'll get into that as we go through the series. But like the whole there's only one copy of the Doctor ever, and when they download him into something else, they for some reason delete it from the ship's computer, sort of thing. It's the whole problem with having
implausible.
Yeah, the whole problem with having a holographic character, a computer generated character, it becomes a problem.
I mean, they had learned of backups by then? I mean, we do backups now, and of course we don't do it, but
right.
Yeah. By the way, one thing I'll give him credit for with the holographic Doctor, who was one of the breakout characters for the show.
Oh, absolutely.
He was a great character. It was not expected to be him. They thought it was going to be Neelix, and it was not. It was the Doctor.
They're usually wrong about that.
Yeah. But earlier this year, I was at a social event where a gentleman had a cardiac arrest, and all of us at the social event sprang into action, and we saved the guy's life. But my role in it was I was the one who got on the phone to 911 and arranged for the EMTs to come. Right. And then other people who were there who were nurses and so forth began CPR while I was getting the EMTs. Right. And when in talking to 911, they were so much less efficient than the Doctor. I was frustrated. It's like they should be, please state the nature of the medical emergency. And they weren't. And I mean, it wasn't even, please state the nature of your emergency or what is your emergency. It wasn't anything that concise. Right. So real life fared poorly in that instance compared to the Doctor.
You know, one thing I do like, though, I don't know if it was their original intention to make the Doctor develop the way they did, or if he was always supposed to be kind of the back behind the scenes character. But one thing I really did like is they fleshed him out as a character. I mean, he went from this very much, please state the nature of the medical emergency, straightforward, I'm emergency medical hologram. That is all I do is don't forget to turn me off when I'm done type of thing, right, to an actual living, breathing character. Really. I mean, he really became as much a part of the crew as anybody else.
That is I mean, they really developed the character. It's more so than almost any other character, I feel like, on the show.
Of the original cast, 7 of 9 competes with that, though, later on.
Yes.
Right. But for him, I mean, his interests, his opera singing, he wants to have a family, his holophotography. And I feel like that at one point, I mean, they introduced the mobile emitter, this 30th century technology, because really, for this character to really grow beyond what they'd done with him, they needed him to be able to get out of the medical bay, the sick bay, and get out there and be part of the crew. And I mean, it introduced some of the issues I was talking about before, but at least, it was, it may allow the character to grow. And some of my favorite episodes are Doctor-centered episodes.
Absolutely.
One character who did not grow and who was the biggest misfire of the original cast was Cass.
Yeah.
Cass is, for those of you who may have forgotten who this person is, Cass was a young woman. She was from a race called the Ocampans. She was played by Jennifer Lien. And the deal is the Ocampans have a 7-year lifespan. And so the natural thing to do with that character is show us all the phases of her life over the course of the 7-year series. That's clearly, what that character was set up for. Yep. And it would have been amazing. And hypothetically, if they had written it well, it could have been amazing where you have Cass dying, getting her first glimpse of Earth, this place she's heard about her entire life. And it would have been so bittersweet. And they completely ruined the character. They had no idea what to do with her. They started doing all this psychic power stuff to try to make her more interesting. And eventually, halfway through the series, they got rid of her and replaced her with the far more interesting 7 of 9.
Right.
Only to bring her back as some kind of angry storm god for an episode.
It totally did violence to the character of Cass. I mean, she was a nice, if there's one thing that defined Cass, she was a nice person.
Sweet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of did this awful thing to her in that episode where they brought her back. And you're like, why? It
was the anti-Tasha Yar ending where they redeemed Tasha Yar by bringing her back, and they ruined Cass by bringing her back.
Right.
You know, I wonder though if they, like you said, they really didn't know what to do with her. You know, she was 1 year old when she got on Voyager, which I guess for Ocampans is kind of like late teenager, early 20s for humans.
Yeah.
But they really didn't show her aging. They didn't show, you would think that if they've got a 7-year lifespan and she's already 1 year into it, that over the course of 6 years or the course of 2 years, you would see some signs of aging. Of course, they didn't do that.
The only thing I can remember them doing that did reflect her life cycle in a significant way was they got to the point where she needed to become pregnant, because if you got a 7-year lifespan, your biological clock ticks really fast.
Yeah.
Right.
And she could have apparently through their magical gee whiz technology had a baby with Neelix, but didn't.
Right.
And that's what they should have done. They should have let us see her, what it's like to have a baby and have this. And for once, there would be a plausible explanation for why a child grows so fast in science fiction. And
you mean like the other little child that was born in the first season and was like 12,
7 years old?
Yeah, was like 12 years old by the end of the 7 years.
Yeah. So there was another missed opportunity. That's like, okay, I guess I'm not ever going to have children in my life. That's sad. New episode.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, and then so we get rid of Cass and we bring in another character we mentioned before, 7 of 9, a former Borg turned into amazingly beautiful woman in a cat suit. So that
wasn't a choice made to get people to watch the show or anything, was it?
No kidding. Yeah, that was a bid for ratings, if anything was. But she was, somewhat emotionless. So it was a bit of a cold fish, shall we say? Who eventually developed attachments, relationships, became more of a more human, less Borg by the end of it.
Right.
Particularly, she was mentored by the captain and the doctor, the other two kind of the breakout character and the main character.
Right. And what the doctor was the doctor kept getting crushes on these different female characters. First it was Cass, and then it was 7. And that was that it was an interesting, they made an interesting part of the characters there where he had quote unquote feelings as much as the program has feelings for her, and they sort of developed. Whereas the captain's role was, she was very much a mother figure to her.
Yes,
which is very interesting.
It's one thing that is kind of behind the scenes with 7 of 9 is when they cast Jerry Ryan as 7 of 9 and brought her into the show. It was kind of like when they added Worf to Deep Space Nine. It was a big change in the show. And unlike Deep Space Nine, Paramount was interested in promoting Voyager because it was the flagship of their new network. And so they dumped tons of publicity on the 7 of 9 change. They made her a central feature of lots of stories. Right. And it caused friction with the rest of the cast because suddenly it was the 7 of 9 show. Yeah. And she was getting all this publicity and all these plots, and everything was centered around her. And I know it caused friction, which I gather has been patched up, but it caused friction in particular with Kate Mulgrew, who was the main character up to this point. And suddenly the spotlight is on this other person. And also the rest of the cast who had their parts correspondingly diminished to give time to 7.
Right. I mean, some of them I was quite happy with having their time diminished, like Harry Kim and others who could have been a good character, but they just kept miswriting.
Harry Kim, you mean the perpetual ensign?
Right. What? No
7
field
years
commissions?
and she doesn't even give him a field commission to lieutenant? I mean,
no
come
kidding.
on.
Yeah,
well, there's not a lot of room for upward mobility on the ship except if a superior dies.
Well, I mean, apparently there are deaths on board. I mean, we do lose people. Yeah. We don't have a lot of time to kind of go through everyone. I mean, we kind of mentioned Neelix on the side.
Yeah, we've kind of talked about the characters. I wanted to talk for a moment, if we could, about the writing of the show.
Yes.
We talked about how there's kind of a lack of an overall arc to the series other than getting home. So it's not like where we have this complex war like in Deep Space Nine. They're trying to do They're trying to do next gen, where we have a new planet or people every so often. And it's not always very successful. Like there's this interminable period early on where they're going through Kazon space. And the Kazon are like, it's like a race with the perpetual bad hair day.
No wonder why they're so angry.
Yeah, they look like they're kind of like Klingons with really bad hair.
Space pirates.
There's another, we get these interactions with the Vidians.
The Herosian.
Eventually we get to the Borg, and that gets more successful. But then they defeat the Borg so many times, they defang the Borg.
Right.
Yeah.
They become like the Daleks or the Cybermen or the Master. What I find frustrating, though, is in individual episodes, two things. And I actually want to do a rewatch of Voyager and keep a spreadsheet of two things. One is the nature of the climax in each episode, because watching the series initially, I noticed so many episodes involve the climax is the characters are standing in front of consoles talking dramatically. Yeah. And that's how they resolve the plot. They stand in front of consoles, punch buttons, and talk dramatically.
I was hoping you were going to use that line.
Yeah. And in particular, I noticed in the first season, there are a bunch of episodes where the climax involves the Voyager or one of its shuttlecraft breaking through a barrier of some kind, and that's the resolution. The other thing I want to keep track of is the number of upgrades that the Voyager gets over the 7 years to deal with various problems, because they in one episode, they'll increase shield efficiency by 50%. And in another, they'll increase it by 75%. And I want to keep this. It turns out like once the Voyager gets back, it is so tricked out. It is this mega powerful death ship that has capabilities no other Star Trek vessel has.
Well, two other things to keep track of. How many torpedoes they fire, which actually someone has done a supercut on YouTube of every torpedo.
And how many shuttlecraft
they lost. Yeah. They had to build a whole new shuttlecraft, the Delta Flyer, just because they kept losing them.
They apparently had like 70 shuttlecraft already on board because they would just blow up a shuttlecraft at the drop of a hat. And then, we're supposed to believe that they're building them in the in the shuttle bay. But the torpedoes is even worse, because they say right in the beginning that we have a limited supply that we cannot replenish. Right. And then it turns out they had 300 some odd torpedoes. I mean, if you want to
kind of go off that, how many episodes does a ship get beat to heck? And the next episode, it looks like it's right out of space dock.
Right. Apart from the season cliffhanger, the Year of Hell.
Which that was the one caveat to that. And I was very disappointed at the ending of that, because the ship does get beat up. I mean, they go to warp and pieces of the hull are flaking off of it. Right. It's that beat up.
Yeah.
And then they do a wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey thing where all of a sudden it's back to the beginning of the year and the ship is pristine again.
But then they don't they have like another sort of mini Year of Hell, like sort of like the spring break of hell? Where they kind of go through a smaller version of it. I thought that something happens.
There was one episode where there was Kes was time jumping.
Okay,
and they flash into that Year of Hell, which of course then suddenly went from Kes being in the Year of Hell to 7 of 9 being in Year of Hell.
Right. Okay. So one of the things, there's a lot we could talk about, but we really need to wrap it up. But there is the I think the biggest cameo in the whole 7 seasons was, of course, The Rock playing the Pandari champion in the Sunkatse arena. This is when he was still primarily a.
It was about the time of like the Mummy and things like that.
Well, he's still a professional wrestler. I think he predates the Mummy and the other things that he did.
Yeah, my understanding is this kind of launched his career as an actor.
Yes, which
that's funny.
Well, let's just say professional wrestling launched his career as an actor, but we could quibble about professional wrestling.
But if you want to talk about cameos, though, Barclay in this is awesome.
Barclay and Deanna Troi are great cameos in this.
That is true.
Also, something we should probably put this in the show notes, but there's a great supercut of all the some kinds of.
Oh yeah.
I recently Facebooked this, where there's this writing tick where instead of saying it's a deflector shield, Captain. The writers have the characters say it's some kind of deflector shield. And if you go through every episode of Voyager, there's only like 7 of them where they don't use the some kind of phrase. And so you've got these hundreds or over 100 uses of this phrase. And someone did a supercut of it and its variants, and it's hilarious to watch. It's some kind of awesome.
That's good. So that, I mean, in a nutshell, that's our overview of Voyager. So you'll get to hear a lot more of that as we go through the individual episodes in the course of the future here. Anything else you want to add to it? Anything we need to make sure we include in this, Father Cory?
Nope.
How about you, Jimmy?
I'm good.
All right, so I'll try to find the links to those videos and put them in the show notes so that we can all enjoy them. But that's it from us. So, what did you think of Star Trek Voyager? What did you think of our opinions on it? Are we all are we wrong? Was this your favorite? I'm sure this is somebody's favorite, and we would love to hear from you why it's your favorite. Give a good defense. It's fine. We can all have different opinions. So, but let us know. Go to sqpn.com/Trek. Go to sqpn.com/Trek. We're trying to avoid, stepping on other people's copyright toes. Yeah. sqpn.com/Trek, or go to the SQPN Facebook page. Find the link to this show, and then leave a comment there. Or you can leave us some feedback by sending us an email to trek@sqpn.com. You can send us a written email. You can send us a voice recording so you could record it, say, on your phone in the voice memo function and email that to us. If you could, we would greatly appreciate if you would go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review to help us stand out from all the other Star Trek podcasts that are out there and to grow the audience, and to like, share, retweet the podcast to other Star Trek fans so that they can hear about it. We only grow because you help us grow. We can't do it organically in the sense of if we post on Facebook or on Twitter, that doesn't get to a new audience unless those of you who listen to us share it further on. So we really appreciate when you do that for us. We greatly appreciate it. So we'll be back next time. We'll be discussing an overview of. It's our last overview episode. We'll be discussing an overview of Enterprise. And I say it's our last overview because we've already done Secrets of
the other series
of Discovery. Yeah, we've done the other series. We've also already done 2 episodes of the first season of Star Trek Discovery. So that's sort of an overview already. So Enterprise will be our last overview, and they'll be getting into regular episodes after that. So until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me in sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Live long and prosper.
Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
Once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening, and remember, listen carefully because I'm only going to say this once. Coffee black.